Our message affirmation this morning is my attitudes prosper me. And of course, I should have expanded that to say my positive attitudes or my good natured attitudes, or you can fill in any objective. But obviously, if you have a negative attitude, you're not going to be very prospered because, as we know, our thoughts and our ideas and our perceptions of the world and what we see around us are what create the reality that we live in. And I think I hear from people overheard in conversations, oh, those new thought people, all they ever talk about is prosperity. Of course, prosperity encompasses so many things. It's not just the money in your wallet or your bank account, it's the happiness, the fulfillment, the love that you have. You can be prosperous in charm. You can be prosperous in laughter and, flat broke in the bank. But so there's all kinds of prosperity. And the way that we obtain that which we seek is through our attitude, through our positive attitude, through our positive ideas, through our positive and prosperous outlook on everything. We may recall from our scripture lesson that as a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who love him. And indeed, it is your Father's pleasure that you live a life of plenty. I'm not sure how many people we have among us who are parents, who do have children. I don't personally, but certainly I know people who do. I've walked the way with people who do and seen their children grow up. And of course, you have a lot of compassion and understanding of the feeling that one has for their child, for their offspring. And all they want for their children is the very best, the very best. And the same is true of our Father, which is with us and within us. A lot of times when we speak about faith, we do think about, the white-haired, long-bearded man up in the sky looking down upon us. But we also know in New Thought that we have a different view of that God is everywhere, that divine spirit is everywhere, including with us and within us in all things that we do. And so, of course, as an extension of this divine loving spirit, we want to at all times be demonstrating attitudes that prosper us. Positive attitudes, positive attitudes. Barbara was mentioning today during the reading of the Daily Word, the recent talk among leaders from North and South Korea, and how wonderful, what a prosperous thing that these two leaders who have shared decades of isolationism and coldness towards each other were able to smile and seemingly get along and talk about this wonderful thing that we as members of this world community, which is reducing nuclear weapons, because we are all given the obligation of being good custodians of this planet. And a lot of time that starts very locally, and our mind can stretch it to the global atmosphere as we think positive thoughts about world leaders coming together and having these discussions and indeed seeing complete reduction of nuclear weapons. And as I mentioned, we start small. Our Board of Trustee meetings that we have every month, we talk a lot about the fact that we are custodians of this building, that, we don't own it. It's just self-perpetually owned by the next leadership group, and that it is our job to be good custodians so that we're passing on something very worthwhile and wonderful, and a place just like this that's full of love and has this wonderful feeling when you just walk in this room that you know that this is a spiritual place. So again, back to our affirmation today, my attitudes prosper me. And so we need to realize this because it's so often that attitudes are something that we think slip away from us or that we don't have any control over it. Or, well, they said something rude to me, and so I didn't have any choice but to say something rude back. And we know, of course, as adults, that we do have a choice. Every day in every way, we have the choice. Just this morning as I was parking, and for those of you who do oftentimes park here on Broadway, you know that sometimes it can be a little tight. And so as I was sort of nestling into a spot, I did sort of nudge the car in front of me, and the driver was in the car, and this woman flew out in a rage. And so, of course, my first question is, are you okay? Is your car okay? Well, yeah, you hit me. And I was, say, okay, well, there's no need to get excited. I have insurance. You file a claim. That's how this works. Let's not get excited. I'm not getting excited. so, so it can be easy to get pulled in and think that it's righteous to be retorting with the same, indignation. I didn't want to mention that bumper looked like it had already been through World War III, but anyway, so I just said, I have insurance. Take a picture of my card and my license, and yes, here's my phone number, and all will be well. Let's not get excited. And I think that upset her more than the than the hitting of the car, that I was, working so hard to calm her down. But of course, it was knowing that approaching this with a positive attitude, that indeed the outcome would be positive. Barbara had shared a recent experience where she reported after having sang the peace song, she was on her way home and she got into an accident, and she remembered that she had just been singing about peace, so she couldn't very well, get into a screaming match with somebody who hit her, but to be positive and have an attitude of positivity, because that's what prospers us. That prospers us in the basic keeping our body going good, because we know that a lot of anxiety and upset is not good for the physical form. This is a great point to drive home, that this is what is meant for you. This is what your maker has intended for you. And of course, along the way, a lot of us meet challenges, and we see some of them as completely insurmountable, and yet holding on to our faith and our belief and being a positive-minded person is what prospers us and gets us over the peaks and down the other side and into the land of milk and honey, just as the chosen people were wandering in the desert for all this time. And they did get sustenance. They had the manna come down from heaven when it was needed, and eventually they found their place. And they knew that by being positive and knowing that it was coming, that they were in the end prospered. And sometimes these things don't happen overnight. We know that. But in all ways, your attitude, an attitude of love, an attitude of happiness, an attitude of joy, an attitude of positivity is what prospers me and what prospers you and you and you and all of us. And so our goal, we like to have a goal to give everybody the week, is to ask yourself, how do I approach financial matters? We didn't get to talk a lot about financial part because, as I mentioned, there's so much more to prosperity than just the financial part of it. But of course, that is a part, because we know the reality is we live in this world and we need financial prosperity to be able to move forward and do the things in life that we need to do, our basic shelter and food, and also to be able to go beyond and do things for other people's. So our goal is, how do I approach my financial matters? Do I see my bills as a nuisance? And again, this goes back to how your attitude prospers you. Do I see them as a blessing? I thank Divine Spirit for having provided me all this electricity all week or all month, or for my access to cable where I could watch delightful, uplifting shows, or the gas bill for keeping me warm and allowing me to cook. So often I can remember as a child the griping that went on as my mom and dad would do the monthly bills and the fighting, and there was none of this happiness, there was none of this appreciation for how you'd already prospered in advance because you received these wonderful, great things. And so now it was time to show your gratitude for these things through this monthly disbursement. When we think about our income, that which we live on, when we think about our weekly or bi-weekly or semi-monthly paycheck, a lot of times we get to this point where we hold tightly to this and this is my money, this is my money. And we have to understand and realize that this is what Divine Spirit has shared with you. It's just a part of the greater whole. Everything out there belongs to everyone, and you are given these resources to take care of your obligations. And so, of course, when you get to that point and your attitude is one of greed or thinking that indeed this is mine, I earned it, and that's all there is to it, and nobody else is entitled to it until I say so. We have to know that indeed, no, this was all given to you by God. God and divine spirit indeed put you in a place where you are able to receive this. And so it's always important to remember that. And indeed, that requires an attitude of positivity, an attitude of positivity and an attitude of thankfulness to divine spirit for having provided that. And so the good news is that we can bring all great things to our lives. We can prosper in terms of monetary considerations, health considerations, love and peace considerations. We realize that all the wonderment we are meant to have begins with us and our attitudes, which control our thoughts and our outlook on all matters involving a prosperous life. So indeed, we're all meant to have prosperous lives, and it all begins up here in our mind and how we approach every daily situation, whether we have a positive attitude or whether we exude negativity and we create these walls which block our prosperity from coming to us. So remember, my attitudes prosper me. So when you think about that, think about the different kind of attitudes you need to have so that you do become prospered. And again, not just in monetary ways, but in health ways, in ways of love and family and companionship and friendship and even peace in the world around us. All these different things, all these different attitudes. My attitudes prosper me. All right, I'd like to invite you to join me now in prayer. Eternal and loving God, we thank you so much for the option to have attitudes that prosper us. We thank you for guiding us, for directing us, for having given us this wonderful, wonderful guide through the scriptures recorded of Christ the way shower, showing us that it is indeed love and positivity that lead us to these lives of great happiness, great health, and great prosperity. We thank you, eternal and loving God, for indeed seeing us as the divine children that we are and for wanting nothing but the best for us. We thank you, eternal and divine spirit, in the name of faith, hope, and love. Amen.